Welcome to the Young Turks. I was almost gonna say damage report, but
yeah, because that makes sense.
The Young
Turks.
Turks.
Like for real. It sounded like I was being sarcastic, but Wednesdays, this is the damage report lineup.
Exactly.
I mean, straight up.
But right now, the Young Turks. And we've got all the Young Turksy and sorts of things that you have come to love and expect. We're gonna talk about Kavanaugh, obviously. There are so many updates that we have to go over, both in terms of what the investigation that is now being reviewed by the Senate actually included, and also little indications of how the vote that's gonna happen in the next 48 hours might actually go down. But beyond that, we have got a report from inside an ICE detention center of horrific conditions. Actually, conditions of, I would say, a life and death sort that we're gonna be talking about. The EPA loosening regulations on, like, I'm not ending that sentence there. You would never be able to guess what they want you to have more of in your body. It's like something out of a comic book. We'll explain that a little bit later on. And then Rebel HQ's Emma Vigeland has gone to another Trump rally. That is always fun. She asked them this time about Medicare for all. Very interesting responses from them to close out the first hour.
Emma is doing very important work for you all. You know, she goes and she asks the right questions and has this calmness about her in the responses.
She does.
And ask the right questions in response instead of just a normal, oh, well, that's what the pulse of the American people are saying. It's what the Heartland is saying. And the Heartland said so it makes sense.
Yeah.
No, just ask more
she's doing
questions,
great work.
that's all.
And look, it's not easy. I wouldn't want to do it. So more power to her. This is what she is amazing at, is going to that sort of environment. And so we're gonna show quite a few of the videos from that. But JR's gonna join me in the first hour. In the second hour, we're gonna have Ida Rodriguez and Nando Vila are gonna be joining us for another full hour. Great stories there. We'll give you a little preview of what to expect a little bit later on the show. Before we get into the prepared material though, I saw something and I just wanna briefly go over it. Bernie Sanders, we know, is a good person. You know, not just, he seems like a good person. Also, the things he's accomplished, like with Amazon, helping to pressure them to raise their minimum wage recently. But he's like almost kind of like a superhero. And the reason is this story I just saw from Business Insider. So Amy Corrado was on Capitol Hill, this is yesterday. And she was walking around, and as many young people are, she wasn't really paying attention to what was going on. And she started to walk into a busy intersection.
Oh my God.
Now, thankfully, there was a good Samaritan nearby who yelled, ma'am, get out of the road. I should have done the voice better. It was Bernie Sanders who was stopping her from walking right into traffic. She says that she stopped. I did not immediately get off the street, even though there was a ton of traffic, because I was in awe to see him, almost like an angel had come down, and you just can't stop but look at it. And he tried to continue to bring her on the sidewalk, saying, ma'am, you've got to get off the street, you've got to get off the street, which she did, not to save her life, but to take a selfie with him. And then, like with Clark Kent, he immediately bolted towards the Senate afterward as people started to notice and a crowd started to come around.
Who added the Clark Kent part? You or
I just did.
Okay.
Yeah. But as soon as people noticed that he had saved this woman, he ran to the Senate building.
Went back to the telephone booth.
How is this real?
Okay. Everyone talks about how, the old man tendencies of Bernie Sanders. I must be older than him because I would have been barking at him like, what are you doing, you stupid young person,
Don't say that stuff. Wait, that's not necessary, just save her life. And that's what he did, he cut right through it.
I would have gotten her attention. She would have gotten out of the road. I would have saved her life too. I just would have done it with a lot less class. But the job would have been handled.
Yeah.
And I would have told her, seriously, you're sitting on the curb now, scared. No, I'm not taking a picture with you. No, get up and go back to work. What's wrong with you?
I think we've learned a lot
Put your
today
phones down.
about Bernie and about JR. Anyway, good job, Bernie Sanders. Thank you for saving that life. Hopefully, if he becomes president, he'll have an opportunity to put policies into effect that will save many more lives.
I thought you were talking about me.
No, you haven't done anything. So you deserve no credit. Okay, let's jump into the important news of the day. As we speak, senators and a limited number of aides have a limited amount of time to look at the one copy of the finished FBI investigation. There's one printed up document in a very secure location that they can go into for a very short period of time and take a look at it. There's gonna be no leaks. You and I will probably never see what is in that document, but we can sort of get an idea of what's in it from what different people are saying. So the White House initially last night said they were very pleased with what was in it and what wasn't in it. And that is based on not looking at it for even a second. Like with all of Donald Trump's book reviews that he tweets out, he didn't read it. But he also doesn't care, and he doesn't need to see it. There's also people like Lindsey Graham who said that they're not going to read the entire thing because they already know how they're going to vote, obviously. But I want to talk about the actual conduct of the FBI, what was investigated, what wasn't investigated. There were concerns along the way that the investigation was being purposefully hamstrung and its scope was limited, both in time and how many people they could talk to. That was how they announced it, remember, last weekend, was that it would be limited in scope. But they haven't liked the media attention around that. They want the aura, if not the reality, of having an actual substantive investigation designed to get to the truth. And so President Trump has insisted publicly that he was not curtailing the inquiry. But privately, the White House restricted the FBI from delving deeply into Kavanaugh's drinking in high school and college and exploring whether he lied to Congress about his alcohol use, according to officials who spoke on the condition of anonymity to discuss a sensitive matter. And beyond that, there were many other limitations on the investigation. First of all, the Senate Republicans have tried to distance themselves from these concerns about too much control being put over the FBI, saying that they haven't provided any sort of limited list of who the FBI can talk to. They should have communicated that with the White House, though, because the White House came out and said that the Senate had given them a list of 4 witnesses that they wanted the FBI to talk to, and that's it. And wait until you hear who was and was not on that list of witnesses. Because here's the thing. This is about a sexual assault accusation. It's about more than one, but it's primarily about one. And there's the accuser and there's the accused. And neither of them were interviewed for this investigation.
Because apparently during of course, the testimony that went down last Thursday, I believe it was, both got to speak. So then they said, we're just gonna submit that into the record. The FBI hasn't anything to do with it. But actually, during that entire time, that inquiry or that testimony was conducted by senators from both sides of the aisle. Of course, some that were in support of Kavanaugh, and it happens vice versa. Ones that were in support of Kavanaugh, the questions weren't really questions when they got to talking to him. And also, when Dr. Blasey Ford was there, the questions were conducted by the special investigator or the prosecutor, right?
Yeah.
So that was taken care of in that way. That's not the FBI. That's not their expertise. Many senators don't have any expertise in anything, you gotta be honest, except for being politicians, because their staff does all the work. So when you have that scenario where they're there to ask both of them questions, and that's what we're gonna submit to the FBI, what would we need the FBI for anyway? So if I see a crime happened, or I think I saw a crime happen, am I qualified to go and conduct the investigation, or do I call the police and say, hey, you guys should conduct this investigation about how my car got stolen? Or should I go out on the streets and start trying to find someone who stole my car and conduct the investigation? No, it's not my place. That's for the authorities to handle.
Well, look, that's one angle. The other angle is if you're accused of a crime and you're worried about, perhaps cracking under the questioning that you might face, just record a selfie video of you talking about what happened, and as long as you've got that, why should any experienced interrogator actually talk to you? It's ridiculous. Of course it's ridiculous. Republican senators don't mind. They think it's perfectly fine because they don't want any additional information. Every bit of information that has come out since this FBI investigation started has hurt Kavanaugh's credibility, and so they don't want any more. Republican voters don't care at all because they've never been interested in the actual facts of whether Kavanaugh assaulted Christine Blasey Ford. And honestly, more importantly, and perhaps more scary, they don't care either way. Whether it happened or it didn't happen, they don't find that to be something that should disqualify you from being on the Supreme Court.
Because there was something else that I thought. If you do, fine, you have their submitted testimony, their sworn testimony from last week. Now, if the FBI interrogates each of them, you might have some discrepancies in their own stories. That's the first thing I thought. I was like, well, of course you interview the first 2 players in the whole scenario first. Then if there's any discrepancies in their stories, you're thinking, oh, what point were they not telling the same truth? Who knows? Again, if you're looking for the truth, maybe the accuser is the one who's not telling the truth to the FBI. Don't you want that answer? Don't you want the FBI to interrogate her and ask her the same thing that she was asked before?
Not interested. So her lawyers have put out a statement saying that it cannot be called an investigation since it didn't interview her nor the witnesses that they put forward who could corroborate her testimony. They're profoundly disappointed, and they should be, because they had between 8 and 20, depending on who you talk to, witnesses that they said could corroborate what happened 36 years ago. The FBI talked to literally none of them. They were not interested. There's a similar sort of situation with some of the other accusations. So Deborah Ramirez, they did actually interview. That was the second accuser. But all of the various people that say that they can corroborate that at the time they knew that Brett Kavanaugh had done what Deborah Ramirez alleges she did, they did an interview because they don't care. Mark Judge, they talked to Mark Judge, but did they go and talk to the supermarket that she says she saw him working at that could sort of hone in on exactly when this alleged assault happened? No, they didn't do that, and apparently were barred from doing it. So again, the Senate Republicans and the White House want to say that they're not getting involved in this, they're not limiting it, but that is what actually happened in terms of the witnesses and in terms of what areas of investigation they could actually go into. I want to give you a little bit more information about what the FBI could have gotten from some of those witnesses that Deborah Ramirez suggested. One has gone forward and gone public, I should say, because he tried to get in touch with the FBI and the FBI would not return his calls. This is Kenneth Appold. This is one of Brett Kavanaugh's college roommates. He was alluded to in Kavanaugh's testimony. There was talk of some sort of issue with a third roommate, and that was supposed to mean that what he had said didn't matter. But he has a lot to say about what Kavanaugh said in that testimony and the actual veracity of it. Appold said that he was 100% certain that he was told that Kavanaugh was the male student who exposed himself to Deborah Ramirez. He said that he never discussed the allegation with Ramirez, whom he said he barely knew in college, but he recalled details, which he said an eyewitness described him at the time that matched Ramirez's memory of what happened. He says specifically, I can corroborate Debbie's account. I believe her because it matches the same story I heard 35 years ago, although the two of us have never talked. So if the fallback is that this is some sort of political vendetta, something Clintons, and they're all working together, he says he didn't know her then, he doesn't know her now, but he knows what he heard at the time. So again, they will say no evidence, no corroboration. They're not interested in the evidence, they're not interested in the corroboration.
You won't get any corroborating evidence if you don't ever get the evidence or you never get the accounts. And again, yeah, sure, many people could be lying. That's why, first of all, you need more than 5 days. It wasn't even a week. First off, you need more than 5 days to collect information, then compare it to other information from other folks. Again, he said he didn't really know her that well, but he'd heard about the stories. There's multiple people who said they'd heard of the story. Again, versus what Judge Kavanaugh said in the hearings last week, saying, if something like this had happened, it'd have been the talk of campus. I'm not sure if you're gonna get to this, but one of those people did say, I heard him say that. And I was like, actually, this is in the 80s, or early 90s, late 80s, where something like this happens. You don't want it to be the talk of campus. You kind of keep it on the hush. You go, man, that was kind of uncomfortable. I'm not sure if I should say anything because there's no one to say it to. Again, the Title IX things weren't put into place where you have someone to report this type of stuff. We talk about the changing of times and how things were different then. No, it wouldn't have been that way because that's the way things were.
Well, there was at least a little bit of talk. Kenneth Appold was involved in that talk.
Absolutely. It'll stay amongst like several people. And if you talk to those several people, you might get some evidence that all makes sense. Someone who never talked to one person or another, or even the potential victim herself, and say, I heard about that and I wasn't even there.
Yeah, the FBI, like, we cannot overlook this. They talked to 9 people total. There were 5 people at that first party. There are at least 4 accusers, plus Kavanaugh, that's 5. They only talked to 9 people. There are literally a couple of dozen people. They could do that in a couple of extra days. I know that the thing is, no, you guys just want to delay. It's like 48 extra hours. You can't do that to get to the truth. We're talking about a lifetime appointment to the Supreme Court. He will rule on hundreds of cases that'll have far-reaching consequences in every area of policy. And we can't afford like a 3-day weekend added to this investigation to, I don't know, actually talk to the guy being accused of multiple sexual assaults. That is ridiculous.
Hey, people go to, for minor crimes, go to jail and wait if they can't make bail. We know how that system works. If they can't make bail, they sit there for an undetermined amount of time while our judicial system gets things together and puts together some way to prove or disprove, or he tries to get a chance to prove himself innocent, or he's supposed to be considered that in the first place. But that process takes some time. So again, for a lifetime appointment, you don't have the time to wait or to figure this whole thing out. To put it in place, what are you in a rush for? What's the big rush? Is the lifetime appointment is there an expiration date on this nomination process? Or are you worried about something else? Do you know that there's a potential for more and more information about this person to come out that the public will know that they really don't want to be heard?
Yeah.
Like all the evidence leads to them wanting to cover things up. If it was a transparent feel to this, tone to their approach, maybe people might believe you. when you say, I've known Judge Kavanaugh for 25 years, he'd never do this. Sure, but let's find out. I haven't known him for 25 years.
Yeah. And if you do rush, then maybe we'll get to finally find out in this country what it's like when you impeach a Supreme Court justice. That'll be an exciting time. Buckle up. So Lindsey Graham is an open-minded guy. You just wanted to get to the truth, find out what's in the report. Now the report is out, and here is what he thinks about it.
I'm confident the FBI did a good job. They were not hindered in any way. The focus of the background check was on credible allegations before the committee. I was looking for certain things to be answered by witnesses. I'm more confident than ever that what the committee found is held up and then some. The main thing for me is that you need to go to the FBI and you need to ask them, did they feel like they were able to do their job without interference? And I think the answer is yes. The senators who requested the supplemental FBI background check got what they requested, and I am ready to vote.
Yeah, he was ready to vote before. That was absolutely full of lies, obvious, demonstrable lies. But it's Lindsey Graham, so what do you expect?
Do you know what time that was? When it was 11:54 a.m. Eastern. I think they began looking at it at 8 a.m. in the shifts. We talked about Chuck Grassley wanted the process to be kept in, so they would make sure that there was no leaking, because maybe some politicians from whatever side want to leak what they saw to the public, and they want to keep it under wraps. So for each party, they'd have to view the report in 1 hour shifts, and the document would change hands between the parties each hour. Mm-hmm. It had been, so from 8 a.m. to almost noon, they'd had almost 4 hours, and he's already giving interviews talking about how sure he is of what happened, and he's ready to vote. I wonder how much he and his staff actually looked at that report.
I mean, do you think he looked at it? Maybe he went in the room with it. I doubt he cared to actually look. So look, we have a little bit more video, but I think we should make two things clear here based on the reaction of many Republicans to this report. And not just the Republicans, but also their supporters, because I've been seeing a lot of conversation. The right-wing pundits, the regular right-wing voters talking about this. Two things have become very clear. The first, having to do with the Republican senators, is, do you remember back before the FBI investigation, in fact, before Kavanaugh and Ford testified at all, there was the doppelganger theory going around, or the Ed Whalen, I guess there was just a guy that looked a lot like Brett Kavanaugh in the area who tried to rape Christine Blasey Ford. Those were theories that were laughed at. However, flash forward a week or so, that is what every Republican senator that is so far on the record saying they will vote for Brett Kavanaugh obviously believes is going on. Because they continually say she is credible, we believe that she was attacked, but we also believe Brett Kavanaugh, he didn't attack her. So somebody back in 1982 in that area that looked enough like Brett Kavanaugh that she has been fooled this entire time into believing it was him, tried to rape her. So in 1 week, we moved from crazy conspiracy theory that is laughed at across the internet to every Republican senator believes that this is literally what happened, and they're willing to put someone on the Supreme Court because of it.
Because the reality, go ahead. Because the reality, honestly, is they either don't believe her or they don't care that it happened.
Or they don't care. Yeah, I guess maybe I'm wrong. Maybe that's the best case scenario for some of these. The worst case scenario is that they think that sexual assault, not so bad. The second thing, this is, I guess, something that women in this country have probably known for a long time. Guys are waking up to it. We are not so different from other parts of the world where women's testimony is considered to be, at best, a fraction as valuable as that of a man. They continually say there is no evidence that any of these things happened. That means that all of these women, what they are saying means absolutely nothing. There needs to be a man who says she is right. There needs to be a man that was there. If Mark Judge doesn't say that she's telling the truth, her testimony amounts to nothing. It is like the despotic regimes that we mock for not having the enlightened view of women and equality that we have here. And yet, when it comes time for a situation like this, we treat women exactly the same. Sure, you believe that you were raped. Okay, maybe you were raped. Maybe someone tried to rape you, but it certainly wasn't him. He's powerful, he's conservative, he's ending up at the Supreme Court.
And he's my friend.
And he's my friend. And so, yeah. I'm sure you believe all sorts of things happened to you, honey, but they didn't actually happen. Maybe if Mark Judge said that you were telling the truth, maybe. He's a conservative man. Maybe we'd believe you then, but not in this case. So this is a dark thing that I have had to realize about how our legal system works. And again, it is the 50th thing that confirms why so many women did not feel comfortable for the entirety of their lives coming forward, because they won't be believed. It doesn't matter how much detail they have. It doesn't matter how many witnesses they have. You will not be believed. The president might go to one of his rallies and literally mock you so that tens of thousands of people will laugh at your pain.
And the people who didn't like it, I know we talked about it yesterday. The people who didn't like it, what Trump did at the rally, were like, oh, that's despicable, disgusting. He divides. He's such a horrible guy when it comes to this stuff. And then we stop talking.
Yeah.
What's the rest of the thought? It's like, so you have a disgusting, horrible, divisive person that you're supporting. That's all you've done is point out who you're supporting and what their characteristics are.
Yeah.
That's all you've done.
Yeah. So look, I wanted to play the videos of Raj Shah, his deputy communications, and he was saying, yeah, all these concerns about drinking, no, they weren't investigated. You know why? Because the only people that wanted that investigated were Democrats, and they're not going to vote for him anyway. This entire thing has been as partisan as any nomination process for a Supreme Court justice has ever been, ever. And to me, it shows that we need to not just get past Kavanaugh. Yes, hashtag cancel Kavanaugh. But beyond that, we need to fundamentally change the way we put forward Supreme Court justices. The lifetime appointment process, there are reasons why it was initially instituted. The idea was that it would insulate the justices from political pressure. It would take some of the partisanship out of the court. Does anyone feel like it's actually accomplishing that in the modern day?
Exact opposite.
The exact opposite, but it certainly comes with a lot of negatives, and we are seeing that on a daily basis right now as we go forward in this process. We need to fundamentally rethink how we put people on the Supreme Court, how long they serve on the Supreme Court, etc. Okay, why don't we take our first break? When we come back, some predictions as to how this might actually play out. We're gonna go to some of the senators. What have they been saying about what came out of the FBI investigation after this?
We hope you're enjoying this free clip from the Young Turks. If you want to get the whole show and more exclusive content while supporting independent media, become a member at tyt.com/join today. In the meantime, enjoy this free segment.
Welcome back to the Young Turks, everybody. Iadarola, Jayar Jackson. Cenk is out, Anna as well, but they will be back, don't worry. And a little bit later on, we're gonna have another panel for you for the second hour. Should be awesome. You guys have been sending in comments. I'm gonna read some of those in a second. Before we do that, did you know that the internet is not always a secure, safe place?
No.
There are dishonest people on the internet who wanna steal your information, steal your identity. I saw even Facebook is having some issues lately. Look, obviously we joke, but we cover a lot of things like that. And the internet does have a lot of insecurity, a lot of potential threats, which is why a lot of savvy internet users use some form of VPN. Now, if you're gonna use a VPN, why not use a secure, versatile VPN? That is why we have partnered with NordVPN. They're, again, incredibly versatile. They have thousands of servers around the world. You can connect up to 6 different devices, so you have your own device versatility as well. It uses military-grade encryption. I don't even know what that means, but if you're gonna have encryption, probably go with what the military uses. And also, not that expensive, because if you go to nordvpn.com/TYT or use code TYT today, you can save 66% and browse, with a feeling of security. So do that. Now let's see what you guys have been saying to us. Gabby Marita, referencing the talk we had about the investigation, says, what the Trump administration calls an investigation, I'd call a cover-up. I would call it that as well. Senator, I think it was Menendez, said it's BS, the investigation. He said the full thing. Eclectic Miscellanea, who I believe has a member content in every episode of the Young Turks these days, says a sexual assault investigation that doesn't even include the victim pretty much sums up what the Republicans think about women's rights. And that's true. And basically every Fox News or other right-wing conversation about this is primarily focused on how a life has been destroyed, Brett Kavanaugh's. There's not even empathy for the victim, let alone justice.
Well, the feigned empathy is when they say, the real culprits here, I think Lindsey Graham said this multiple times, the real culprit here, outside of the judge, is Dr. Blasey Ford, because they used her. So they're both victims of this Democratic plot.
Yeah, here, I would say, to be fair, you can either put this multiple sexual assault accused guy on the Supreme Court or pretend that you're the actual one who cares about the victim. How about choose one of those two things, Lindsey Graham? By the way, I also just want to thank all of the people who protested today. at the Hart Senate building. They took over the atrium there, pressing for senators to stop Kavanaugh from getting on the Supreme Court. There were so many activists there, which was absolutely awesome. I saw some celebrities got arrested. Emily Ratajkowski and Amy Schumer were at the very least detained during this, as well as many other people. And so, as always, thank you to those of you who are not only staying invested in what's going on in this country, but getting out there and getting active to try to have your voice be heard.
Yeah, do the officers actually target people that they recognize first, or probably avoid targeting the people they recognize first?
I mean, generally when they're locking up people, it's just they're sweeping a whole bunch of people. So I don't think that they go out of their way necessarily. And generally, like we had Piper Perabo was on the Damage Report. When she was arrested, I think 60 people were arrested. So they really round them up.
Yeah.
Okay, let's turn now to the future. The vote for Brett Kavanaugh to potentially get on the Supreme Court looks like it's gonna happen in the next 48 hours. It doesn't look like there's much at this point that's gonna stop it, but do they actually have the votes? And we have a little bit of information. I'm gonna start now with the Democrats. You might think we know exactly how they're gonna vote. Obviously, they're not gonna put this crazy right-winger who's been accused of multiple sexual assaults on the Supreme Court, but no, we've got some red state Democrats, so you never know. However, some of them have come out and said, like Heidi Heitkamp said, this isn't a political decision. If this were a political decision for me, I certainly would be deciding this the other way. I can't get up in the morning and look at the experience I've had and say yes to Judge Kavanaugh. So Heidi Heitkamp, who is actually in a very tight Senate race in a red state right now, says she is not going to vote for him. So that is good news. Joe Manchin at this point, I don't know.
Okay, so we know how politicians think, and every time it's about getting reelected. Many of them have backgrounds as attorneys. I think probably a significant, like majority of them probably. I feel like every one of them, or doctors or whatever else, businessmen. But so the worry about making sure that you're gonna get reelected no matter what, when you're supposed to go there and represent your people, or at least do something that's based on your principles that you probably ran on. I don't understand the obsession with making sure you're gonna get in. It's not like it's your only job, or even the best job you've had, or highest paying job you ever had in your life, or that you can't do something else. Hey, if you stand by your principles and you vote and make sure you do things that the American people want, and you get voted out because of it, okay. Hey, the American people, if they somehow get fooled into thinking your principles that actually helped them along, get you out of office, you've done your duty and you've served up to a point where you can help. And then they had a mistake in sending you out. It's openly said, straight up. Jeff Flake said it. If I was running for re-election, I wouldn't have even called for this FBI investigation. That he was the catalyst that made it happen. He wouldn't do it because we're worried about re-election so much. Just do what you're gonna do. If you don't get re-elected, what's the big deal? Okay, I've been in the Senate for 20 years. Fine, do something else, but do something for American people. It shows where the representation of the country actually is gone. No one cares about representing. They care about getting that next job, as if they don't get that next re-election, they're gonna end up on the streets. It's just not the case.
Yeah, and with the Republicans, I mean, there's only so much pressure we can actually put on them. Like, they're raising money to try to get Susan Collins out if she votes for him. That's certainly good. But for the Democrats, I think on some level they haven't really woken up to what's going on in this country, because they're worried about the political implications if they don't support him. Here's the thing, we've spent this whole year supporting progressive candidates in primaries where Cenk and I and others, including JR, have covered literally every primary night that happened, making sure that people know about the right candidates. That's why we were covering, for example, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez in literally dozens of videos a year before the election, while others have finally caught on. And those candidates have been winning. So here's the thing, you might think that if you support Judge Kavanaugh, you have a better chance in the general election. I got news for you, you're gonna lose your primary, because we're gonna be waiting for you the next time around. You might think that you've saved your political future. No, you've simply nailed your coffin shut with a slightly different shade of when it's gonna happen. And so that is a promise that I would make to Heidi Heitkamp, to Joe Manchin, hopefully the next time around, and others as well.
Well, Joe Manchin has had a couple knives in his back already for supporting things that this particular administration was talking about. When he made sure he was facilitating whatever it was that Mike Pence wanted. And then Mike Pence still went on the campaign trail and said, you know this loser, you know what he does? He goes around and kisses his ass, and then he goes, wait a second, I thought I was on your side. No. And no matter how many times it happens to you, you will continue to push down that road because you think, hey, it's gonna keep me in office, no matter how much you get humiliated, honestly, after you just got through bowing down to someone who actually doesn't care anything about your political aspirations.
Yeah, and one of the lessons of the past 2 years, or since Donald Trump got in office, is almost anything can happen no matter how bad it is, it generally passes out of the news and we move on. That's one of the sad things about the news cycles over the past year. But I got news for you. When it comes to Judge Kavanaugh, for the rest of our lives, I don't care how long passes between now and then, when we hear the name Judge Kavanaugh, we're gonna think multiple sexual assaults. When we hear the name Judge Kavanaugh, we're gonna think of the name Christine Blasey Ford, Deborah Ramirez, Julie Swetnick, and others as well. We're not gonna forget about this, and we're not going to forget how people voted on this. That's true for the Republicans, also true for the Democrats, so bear that in mind. Now, on to the indications that some others have given. Jeff Flake, who of course pushed for this FBI sham investigation in the first place. So Elena Plott of The Atlantic tweeted, I'm told by source with direct knowledge that Flake is, quote, still having issues and that some colleagues are trying to walk him through them. The issue is that he briefly felt a stiffening in his back and it was such an unfamiliar sensation that he desperately went to the Republicans to soften him up again. Senator Coons, who along with Flake said that if it turned out that he had lied during his testimony, they would not support him, says that just now that Flake reached out to him and asked if they could speak at length later. A Senate aide said Murkowski is scaring everyone, but I don't know, they won't say who the aide is for. So are they scaring us because they're gonna support her or scaring us because they're not gonna support him?
I don't know. The
Honestly,
easy question to ask Jeff Flake in this whole thing is after that interview, I'm sure people in the media have seen this, maybe reporters, he's doing a media tour. So after he said, if it comes out that he was lying in the testimony last week, then that would eliminate him completely. Hey, many publications, many people, I mean, maybe watch the Young Turks, pointed out the multiple times he lied at that testimony. So the next question of Jeff Flake is, so here's my list.
Yeah.
I got 5 pages of lies. Which one of these is the one that's gonna disqualify him? And let him answer that question because I still don't believe him.
Yeah, look, my gut says that they're gonna disappoint us.
My gut always
That's what my gut says.
Because
it doesn't always happen.
Yeah.
I mean, John McCain,
That's true.
as bad as he is, he did put the thumbs down on the full ACA repeal. It is possible that Jeff Flake will decide in the last days that he will serve as a senator. And I know he thinks that this is just one step on the continuation of his career when he runs for and becomes the Republican nominee for president. Jeff Flake, buddy, that's not going to happen, okay? This is the end. Go out with a little bit of pride, a little bit of dignity, do the right thing, okay? You're gonna go, you're gonna lobby, you're gonna make tons of money. You are gonna be absolutely fine, but you're not gonna be president. So don't worry about that. Worry about what message you are sending to tens of millions of women who have been through similar experiences and want for once to think that their government actually has their back and not just the backs of well-connected, powerful conservative males. And please do the right thing.
What is it? He can only lose one. He can still lose one Republican vote. I think I remember seeing. He can lose one Republican vote. I'm trying to think of the numbers.
Yes.
And then still survive. So I mean, even in that aspect, there would need to be 2, and that's why
I don't even know.
I have such skepticism on this.
Yeah, we'll see. By the way, random, but there's been all these different groups coming out to say that they don't support Kavanaugh, that don't normally get involved. There was this giant group of different churches that said he should not be put on the Supreme Court. You had like 650 it's 1,200 law professors now have said that based on his temperament and judicial, all that he showed in the testimony, he shouldn't be put there. I didn't even know that there were 1,200 law professors in the country, but apparently there are, and they agree on something. But also, retired Justice John Paul Stevens said that Kavanaugh's temperament and judgment don't meet the standard for the Supreme Court. It is not often that retired Supreme Court justices weigh in on new ones. And bear in mind, John Paul Stevens supported Kavanaugh before the allegations came out. So it did actually switch after the testimony.
It's because he gets to think for himself now.
Yes.
Sorry, last thing. I know we've gone way too long with Kavanaugh. But you know what? It's actually harder to have to try and weigh out whether or not this senator or that third senator is gonna vote a certain way so that I can determine my vote based off that. I'm talking about maybe some of the red state Democrats that are in this position right now. Because they're thinking, okay, if it's gonna be overwhelming and they're gonna vote for him anyway, then I can too and I can still look good. If you ignore what everyone else is saying and just do what you think based off of your own moral and principles, or if you're representative of people, of those people's morals and principles, or the general thought process of the country, if you do it that way, you don't have to worry about other people and just let it fall where it does. That's easier on your brain. Just relax and do what you feel is right and do what based off of what you've seen and read, not off of what other people have done. It's way more work, gives you more headaches. Just relax. You're getting paid enough already.
Yeah. Do what's right. That's That doesn't often come up, unfortunately. Okay, look, I wish that we could keep talking about this. Most important story in the country right now, obviously, it's why on the Damage Report we've covered it possibly more than any other show in the country. But we do have other news to get to, so we're gonna take a break. When we come back, an ICE immigration facility where they detain various people, absolutely horrific conditions. We're gonna give you the lowdown on that. And then what does the EPA want more of in your body? Coming up soon.